I think that's something both in faith and in life that we have to learn is that like we can prepare, but will we ever feel ready? I don't know, maybe having twins helped me realize like, oh, you have zero children, let's have two at one time. We're just gonna jump right in. So I don't know if that's like a spirit of something that has prepared me to just kind of keep going. It might be that, just like I just haven't quit.
Yeah.
And I think that helps
Yeah.
to like keep showing up to the work that sometimes doesn't make sense, that you never feel ready for.
Well, hey crew, it's Adam. You're listening to The Conversation. Today we're at episode 268. And if right now you are trying to make a decision, like should I stay or should I leave my job? Should I do this opportunity or should I walk away from it? If you are trying to make a decision right now in life, this episode is for you. Friends, regardless of where you are, just know that I am honored and thrilled that you are tuning in. And my hope is in these next 28 or so minutes, my hope is if you're trying to figure out how to make a difference with your life or you're walking through an pretty part of being human, I want you to know that you are not alone. Well, before we go any further, I want to give a huge shout out to our partners. These are partners that I know so well and I trust them so much, and that's why I want you to know about them as well. Our first partner, an incredible company called Vern Eide Mitsubishi. They are a growing employee-owned, faith-based company that strives to deliver dreams and transform lives. Just in short, they are a company who is intentionally trying to make a difference in their community, who also just so happens to sell cars. I've purchased my last 3 vehicles from Vern Eide, and honestly, I am proud to tell people that's where I go. Whether it's a new Outlander like I own and love myself, whether it's an Acura, Ford, Chevy, GMC, or Honda, you name the make of vehicle and they most likely have it. And no matter where you live, they will ship it to you. Go visit verneide.com. If you're looking for a new vehicle, verneide.com. Our second partner is the International Justice Mission. I love IJM. If you're new to the conversation, IJM is a global organization working to end slavery and violence around the world. Talk about a goal, right? To do this, they partner with local authorities, they rescue victims, and they arrest and prosecute criminals and abusers. One of the main reasons that people all around the world are being freed is because of people just like you who make these rescues possible. IJM supporters who give on a monthly basis are called Freedom Partners. And just to let you know, my wife and I, we are Freedom Partners ourselves. And again, we're so proud of it. Freedom Partners make these rescues possible every single day, all year long. If you are interested in supporting and partnering with IJM, please go IJM.org and become a Freedom Partner, okay? Go to visit IJM, take a look around, whether it's $20 a month or $100 a month, go become a Freedom Partner, okay? Today's conversation, I'm pumped. I sat down with well-known author and podcaster Emily P. Freeman. Emily is someone that I have known and admired for years from afar. This is my first time actually interacting with her. She has a master's degree in spiritual formation and leadership, and her superpower is helping people to discern their next right step in their life. Their next right step in life. Decisions like when to stay or leave my job, what opportunities do I pursue, and which ones do I walk away from? What do I do when there is no wrong answer to the decision that I'm trying to make? If you're asking questions like this yourself, you're going to love this episode. On that note, as always, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Well, Emily, oftentimes we hear a person's highlight reel. If you're willing to share about a current unpretty part of your life, it could be grief. It could be something that's annoying, big or small. Is there currently an unpretty part that you're willing to share about?
I love how you just jump right in. Like there's no easing your way in. It's just like deep end, go.
Let's just go.
Well, I have an answer for this because it's so current right now in my life. So I've been doing this work of like writing and some speaking, but mostly, writing and podcasting for many years, right? Like over a decade, like 15, 17 years. There is something I still have, the hardest part of my job is preparing for a talk. Listen, people say the biggest fear is public speaking. I'm over that. Like I can speak in public. It's totally fine. If you write the talk, I'll give it. But the process of like sitting down and writing out a talk, like I do a podcast episode every week for 7 years, no problem. Why is it that the idea of preparing for some type of like speech or sermon or talk is like the hardest work I do? And the reason why it's an unhighlight reel is because I feel like I should know how to do this by now. Like I literally
Whoa.
get paid to do this. And it is just always chaotic. I always feel like it's the first time I've ever done it. If you have any advice, I will take it. But I'm in the midst of doing that right now, and it is eating me for lunch.
How about that? Well, you are speaking directly to my soul. I am a pastor, been one for 18 years, and communicate to the same crowd every single week, so you can't reuse anything.
Right.
And I still feel that way. I just finished, I'm going to put that in quotes, my message for Sunday. I preach it to a team at 1:30 today that will annihilate it, and I want them to annihilate it, but I
Right.
still feel what you just explained every single week.
I keep thinking like I'm doing this wrong. There's got to be a better way. But as I continue to do it, I think like this just might be my way. This just
Yeah.
might be my messy, chaotic, ridiculous way. And then once it's time to deliver it, I'm totally fine. Like but it's the process of getting there that it always just feels so disorienting and like upending. And I don't know. I haven't figured it out.
Not to sound like a pastor, for me,
Please do.
Well, for me, each week, I feel like it's a mini miracle when I see it come together.
Yep. That's exactly right.
Like I'm a person who likes to check things off, likes to accomplish things. I'm a driven person. And it's the one thing that I feel like I can't force.
Yep.
And so it
Yes.
makes me be in tune with God. It even makes me be in tune with my wife. If I have any sort of riff with my wife, close friend, something, I literally can't do anything with my message. And so for me, it's really kind of the one thing that each week God just gets my attention. If he hasn't had it before it, when I start, I'm like, Lord, I'm fully dependent on you. And so I'm just waiting to hear your voice. So thanks for sharing that part of things.
Yeah, that's real. You see, and you saying that, you've just guaranteed you're going to have to do this work forever.
Exactly. Well, it's like
Keep you humble.
I told my kids the other day, I'm like, God knew I needed to be in church 4 services every single weekend. And so he made me a pastor. So
I love it.
There's
I love
that.
it.
Emily, if you'd be willing to share, even for myself, the Cliff Notes version of your story, professionally, faith-wise, yeah, share that. This will be mostly brand new information even for myself.
I could say anything, right?
You can say anything.
I could say anything. No, well, I'll just tell you, Adam, I've been married to my husband, John, now for 23 years. We have twins who are 20 and juniors in college and a son who's a senior in high school. So we are living it to the fullest, the parenting life. But I've been in North Carolina my whole adult life. I came here for college and started out thinking I was going to be a sign language interpreter. Like that was my work. I learned the language. I learned how to listen one language translated into another for a group of people for whom English was their second language. And I did that for many years. Then I had 2 babies at one time, yada, yada, yada. Now I write books for a living. But what I've learned in this process of, I have 6 books I've written by now. The last 3, all about the process of discernment and decision making. Whoa. And what happens kind of at that crossroads of when we have a decision to make, what is formational about that process? Not just like people come to me, for help to make good decisions, wise decisions, and I get it, but secretly that's really secondary. The primary point for me is, who are you becoming in the process of making this decision, and how is God forming, unforming, deforming, reforming us as we are having to confront these places in our lives where we don't know what to do next and we desperately want to do the right thing. And I put that in quotes. But my most recent work, the last several years, I have found a lot of my vocational expression is showing up serving as a spiritual director, which I've been doing for several years, just like quietly one-on-one with a very small handful of directees. But I've learned that all that training I did as a sign language interpreter has really translated still. There were transferable skills in learning how to translate sort of one language into another. I'm still doing that, but now I do it sort of as this inner and outer life language. I have a lot of people sometimes tell me, like, were you reading my journals when you recorded that podcast episode or whatever it is? So host a podcast called The Next Right Thing. We talk about decision making and discernment. But again, it's really less about the decisions that we're making and more about the person who we are becoming.
That's awesome. Okay, so I'm going to have you brag on yourself just for a moment. It might be awkward. What is the secret sauce that you think you've found in your life? I feel like I see your name everywhere. And so I'm like, seriously, like I've been giddy to connect with you because I'm like, I see her name everywhere. Is there one or two things that you think like, this is what I see God honoring, or like what, if you had to dissect it?
I think one thing I would say when I think professionally is a persistent stubbornness to start before I feel like I'm ready. I think, the podcast started when I was not ready and thought I had 10 episodes, and here we are 340 episodes in. I just keep doing it, Adam. I don't know. Am I going to stop? I don't know. And I think that's something both in faith and in life that we have to learn, is that like we can prepare, but will we ever feel ready? I don't know, maybe having twins helped me realize like, oh, you have 0 children? Let's have 2 at one time. We're just going to jump right in. So I don't know if that's like a spirit of something that has prepared me to just kind of keep going. It might be that, just like, I just haven't quit.
Yeah.
And I think that helps
Yeah.
to like keep showing up to the work that sometimes doesn't make sense, that you never feel ready for. And I think maybe the second thing would be just a willingness to always be a beginner. I don't say that I do that well, but I think recognizing in the work that I do that, man, we've never arrived, have we?
Oh my
We're
gosh.
just we're not professionals. I mean, we have professional work, but our personhood, we're young on the inside, and we're showing up as beginners day after day. And maybe that's part of it. I don't know.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. And I think both of those things, just even the second part, what I hear in that is just humility. And I think that's something that God does honor a whole bunch. So, okay, Emily, your newest message, I'm just going to say message. It's a book, but yes, just message in general, is about knowing how to walk into a room. Maybe if you want to start by explaining just the different rooms we live in and what that means, and also specifically like what grabbed you about this specific message. I'm just going to turn you loose.
When I think about our lives, I, for better or worse, always think in metaphor. And so one of the metaphors that has been helpful for me is to think about our lives as a house. And if our life is a house, then all of our decisions, all of our commitments, all of our loves and losses really are sort of like rooms, and they happen in rooms. In some of these rooms we were born into, maybe a particular faith community, definitely a family. And some of the rooms we choose. And so the question that I think we all often have is, what do we do when a room that we're in is no longer a room where we feel like we belong? Maybe we have changed on the inside. Maybe something about the room has changed. Maybe the people in the room have changed. And I think what happens is that when we are questioning a vocational choice, a place where we live, a community that we're a part of, oftentimes we get caught up in our own narratives of leaving and staying. So leaving or staying it's no longer just a decision to make that's neutral. It now is saying something about, am I a leaver or am I a stayer? It's speaking to our identity. And I think then we can get caught up in it gets really cloudy when we try to find a kind of a clear next right thing, and listening to the voice of God and listening to our own desire. And instead of sort of embracing and leaning into the healthy human rhythm of leaving rooms and finding new ones, we get caught up in, what does it say about me if I quit this thing I committed to? And so I wanted to, and I'm wanting to continue the conversation that's already happening of what do we do when we're in this space? How do we make wise decisions? How can we know if like I'm being selfish or if God is leading? And there is a simple framework that you can follow to kind of figure those things out. I never promise results or like sure things, but I do think it's helpful to have simple frameworks to follow when it comes to decisions like this.
And is that something for you personally that you've wrestled with on a personal level? Like, has there been, yeah, is there anything specifically that you're like, and this is me, or yeah, is there anything personal that you've had to wrestle with when it comes to what rooms to be in?
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of things personal. I think we're always standing at thresholds. We're always standing in hallways, and we're always entering rooms and leaving rooms. For me personally, and maybe the catalyst for actually having a bigger conversation about this was we left our beloved church of 7 years, not because we wanted to, but because as we looked around us and as we looked within us, that this particular faith community, though full of wonderful people and in many ways a wonderful place, just was no longer a place where our whole family could flourish and grow. And so because of that, we discerned over several years that it was time for us to leave. And that was a painful decision, and one wrought with a lot of questions and a lot of relationship questions, like if we don't belong here, where do we belong? And so I think that was a pivotal kind of decision for us and our family. And also, but I realize we're not the only ones. Like there are so many people who are making that type of choice, who are in the midst of it, or people who are in a faith community. We'll just speak, since that was my example, where people have left and you're the one who has stayed. And so there's complications and, a lot of questions that we might have about that. Like, oh, well, if I'm still here and they left, what does that say about me? So we're kind of always wondering, what is my place here? Am I going to be okay? Am I going to be left alone? So that's kind of the personal decision that made me want to have this conversation on a larger scale.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And even the fact, as a pastor hearing that, even the fact that you wrestled with that says so much about you. Like I think that's such an honoring thing, and that it wasn't this easy decision says so much. So how should we know when to leave a room? Whether it's, for me as a pastor, I often hear about my job. Hey, Adam, what should I do? Should I stay in this job? Should I not? I've been in it for years, or I've been here a year. What advice, specifically as an example, job, how should I know when to stay or go?
Well, I think it starts with paying attention to what is true and being really honest with yourself about the room that you're in. If the room is, for example, your job, I think it's important, number one, to ask yourself, what is good and beautiful about this job? What do I love? So that if you do decide to walk away from this particular job, that you were really honest about what it was you were going to lose. Sometimes if we're questioning a job, the temptation is to just say, well, it's all terrible, everything, and here's all the bad things about it. But what will happen then, I think, is it's not a true leaving. You're really leaving an idea of what you have told yourself the job is, so that it makes it easier to leave. I think it was Beth Moore who said, it's easier to leave when we're angry than when we're sad. And so, I'm like, write it down.
That's
Mama
so
Beth.
good.
It was so good. But I think that's why we can get ourselves worked up into anger, because we know, our bodies know, it's easier to leave when I'm hot mad than it is when I'm really sad. And so I think being honest about the things that are beautiful can help us leave more honestly if leaving ends up being the choice. So that's one thing. What's good and beautiful here? Another thing is, what are the corners of this room that I've been avoiding? Are there things about this work that you've known all along are not working for you, or are contrary to your core values, or are messing with your family life? Whatever it is, can you turn the lights on in this room, just maybe even slowly, maybe even just a little bit more than you have in the past, and just give yourself permission to name what you see for real and be specific. I think sometimes we say like, well, my job's just not working. Okay, well, is it the whole job, every single aspect? What is it specifically? And what you might discover is actually it's just the commute. The commute is killing me. And when you name that, you might discover right there an answer like, oh, I just need to change. Maybe I can work from home 2 days a week. And that solves the problem of the commute, at least partially. There might be partial solutions. So I think being honest about what's good, being honest about what's hard. And then also I think paying attention to who is in this room with me, who has already left and who's walking in. And that can help you know, like, is this a space that still fits? Is this still a place where I have, agency to make a difference, where I have the energy to make a difference, where I have partners here who get me? If people who know me the best showed up in this conference room and saw the way I behave, the things that I say, the way people respond to me, would they say, yeah, that's her? I know who that is. That's my friend Emily. Or would they say, who is she? She's not speaking up when she has something to say, or she's getting really angry for no reason. Like, would they recognize me if they showed up in that room? So imagining the people who know you the best showing up in the room, seeing how they respond to you, that's a good idea. That's a good indicator to know, like, is this a fit for me or is it not?
That's so good. Everything you just shared practically was super helpful. With the job end of things, okay, so I'm kind of sensing it's the end of my time at a place, but I can't just randomly quit it because I have a family. Any steps as far as like, because with a job, you kind of have to leave one room and go into another one right away. Most people do.
Yeah.
Some people have the financial freedom where it's like, I got no hurry, so I can just take my time. But that's probably
Must
not
be
most.
nice.
That's yeah, right. Exactly. Advice on what if you're sensing, yep, I think I am supposed to be leaving, as far as steps that you should take into another room. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. And I think following the simple framework, I use the acronym PRAY, P-R-A-Y. P we've already covered, which is point and call. Like, what is here? What is true about this room? The second is R, which is remember your path. So I think if you're in that space of like, oh, I got to do a next thing. I don't know what it is, but I know it's not this. I think having a practice of reflection, of looking at the path behind you, rather than like imagining this is scary to think about something that doesn't exist yet. But looking back at times when you did make maybe a career shift or a job change, what was that like? What were the steps you took then? What worked before? What was really life-giving about the process? What was life-draining? Naming those things can be helpful. That's remembering your path. And then A is acknowledge presence. Who's with you?
Yeah.
Because guess what? When you leave one room and walk into another one, you're not going to go alone. God our Father, God the Son, and God our Holy Witness is with us in the midst of every transition. And sometimes just knowing that, even if it's just for now, just for today, I know that no matter what happens next, even if I like royally wreck it up, God's going to be with me. And there can be a great comfort in knowing that God's presence goes with me. But there's other presence too. I think paying attention to very practical things like who has done this recently, who's in my life, who I can talk to. Is there a counselor, a pastor, a spiritual director, a job career person, who can advise me, getting all the help that we can. We don't have to do this alone. And then the final step is why? Yield to the arrows. I think so often when we have a question, we immediately are looking for an answer. We think 1 + 1 = 2, A, B. But in reality, when we look at the decisions we've made in our lives, it's question, and then it's arrow, 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 and maybe eventually answer, and maybe never. But I think being really keenly attuned to the small movements. What is my next right thing today? Maybe I don't know what's going to happen 5 next right things from now. But being able to name one arrow, and by the way, pro tip, arrows aren't just like a feeling in the air of like maybe an arrow, the way I define it in discernment, is an action. Arrows begin with action. So what's my next right thing? Okay, I'm going to email such and so. I'm going to schedule a blah, blah, blah.
That's good.
And it's an action word. And so that can help us feel a little bit of agency over the process, even when we don't know where we're going to end up.
That's good. What about the person who just goes from room to room to room and it's just flakiness? How do I know if I'm being just flaky, not committing, just kind of bouncing around, and any signs that it's so hard to see in ourselves? And
it's so hard to see in ourselves. And you know what, Adam? It's funny because I so seldom have to answer a question like that, because the people who are in my world are the opposite. they're like staying in a room way too long. Like they just stay in the one place and they're like, is it me or is it God? And am I selfish or not? And so they're like cement to the ground, must stay at all costs type of people. Like they're like, there's no way that I could possibly make a change. So we fly like those type of people flitting around. They are not listening to my podcast. They're not coming into my door because they're, like you said, like they're not asking the question, And I think probably if someone's asking the question, wait, am I flaky? The answer is probably not. Like you're probably not if you're asking that, right? You're laughing. Is this you? Tell me more.
No, I just think it's funny that you're like, yeah, they probably wouldn't listen to my podcast.
They don't care what I have to say, sir.
That's so good. Okay, so I'm going to ask a personal question. I'm trying to figure out what room I should be in. So I know that I'm supposed to be a pastor, so that part is settled. But I'm trying to figure out, in addition to that, because I'm kind of an antsy whatever, what I should be doing. Whether it's writing books, continuing podcast, like courses. I'm trying to figure out some of that. For this specific example, so I'm trying to figure out what room to go in. Yeah. And maybe I guess there's other rooms that I could step out of. I probably have to if I want to step into a new room. I feel like you can send me your spiritual direction bill. It's Sioux Falls, South Dakota, 57. Yeah,
sure. Right. No, here's my question for you, Adam, in that, because I think you're articulating something a lot of people feel. Here's what I hear you saying. I feel like I'm standing at a threshold and I don't know which room to go into next.
Yes.
But what it sounds like you do know, and tell me if this is true, is that you're standing at a threshold. And I guess my curious question for you is, how do you know that there is a next room, that what is it within you? What word or language would you give to that sense that you need to do something else?
First off, this is my podcast. You can't ask personal questions to me. I'm joking. So this is so deep all of a sudden. That was a terrible question I asked. I'm just joking. Okay. So I think, I just want to, at this point in my life, I want to be the most effective I possibly can be. And I have a sense that I am maybe spread too thin right now. And so I see God getting behind the church in just a really beautiful way right now, which is so exciting. I started it when I was 24 and I'm 42. And I have no rose-colored glasses left. But I and in some other areas of my life, I'm seeing like moderate success. I don't know, that's a weird word to put. I'm putting that in quotes. And I just want to put my hands to the right plow. I think that's what I'm wrestling with. So I have these things, but I'm just trying to figure out like, okay, God, what am I supposed to be doing? So how will you know when you found it? Oh gosh, I feel like I'm speaking as an Enneagram 3 right now. Maybe when I see that breakthrough. Maybe? Question mark?
Say more about breakthrough.
When I see just where it's just like, God, this is clearly you and not me. That's what I feel about the church right now. You said work in progress. I'm the biggest work in progress I've ever met. I've never been more unimpressed with myself and in total awe of God. People, just even this morning, someone came up to me, Adam, you're amazing. I just want to say hello. And I was like, oh, please do not be impressed with this guy. Talk to my children, my wife, my English setter. All of them will be like, yeah, he's not that impressive. But so I just think those moments where like, it's just like, God is clearly moving. It's almost even, Emily, what I mentioned about you. I feel like I'm seeing your name all over the place. That was actually a question for myself of like, what was those many breakthroughs? Because I think that's what I've been looking for. This is the Emily Freeman podcast. And Today's guest is Adam Weber.
Adam Weber.
Yeah, it's
Yes,
awesome.
Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Let's talk about your next right thing.
Exactly. No, so that's where I'm at. And I think there's a lot of people at that similar place. And that's why I'm like, it feels appropriate to randomly ask a super personal question, because I think there's other people with that same thing.
And I think just to close out your vulnerable moment, I think something that is you're saying without saying is that you're tapping into a desire that you have, and it's swirling beneath the surface, and it's mixed in with probably some of your vocation. It's mixed in with probably some things from childhood, like we probably all know is there. It's mixed in with some really holy, beautiful invitation from God. And sometimes we wait until all those things are like separated out and we can figure it out. It's like, I have to know it's all God or it's all me. And good luck, because probably it's just going to be a big, colorful mix of like selfishness and also holiness and like humanity and divine. But something that I hear you saying is, I have this desire deep within me. And what do I do with it?
Yep.
What do I do with this desire? And so I just want to say for you or anyone or me, anyone who's kind of like has this desire out there, is that what a beautiful and important thing it is to be able to name that desire. And there is a difference between naming it and clinging to it.
That's good.
And that sometimes we're afraid to say our desire out loud because we think it's selfish or like I'm trying to toot my own horn or whatever. But like confessing your desire and demanding that you get it, they're two very different things done with two very different postures. And so I just love your willingness to put it out there and say, I have this desire. I don't know what's going to happen with it, but I think it's really important that I say it out loud. And some really beautiful things can happen when we're willing to admit what it is we most want. Because if we don't, it will still come out, but it'll come out in weird sideways ways, like through like regret or like, fear or anxiety in the night. So may as well just freely confess it and see what might happen next.
That's so good. Thanks for letting me be super personal in that way. And I think for me, like, I love how you said that. It's really true. I feel like I'm so hands wide open right now. Just having had several losses in my life recently of loved ones has really just like, okay, Lord, I really want to run the race well. Not to earn your love. I know I'm deeply loved by God, but I want my work to be meaningful and to touch as many lives as possible. And so I feel like I'm at that place where it's just like, Lord, I'm really arms wide open right now. So good, so good. As we step into fall, last question, as we step into fall, which can be busy, insane schedule-wise. Even today, my wife was texting me, hey, are we open this night? And we're juggling schedules. Any advice or wisdom on decision-making and how we can be intentional this fall?
I think that the same kind of rings true.
Yeah.
Is that we really like to be productive and we really love when everything's kind of all planned out. But this idea, when I look at the life of Christ, not to get too spiritual, but when you look at the life of Christ, like, I don't know that he looked into his next season and was like, okay, here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to do it. We're going to plan it out. He just sort of lived this like very simple next right thing life and like moved at a walking pace. And so though obviously it's not wrong to plan our fallout, goodness gracious knows I've done it and we're all doing it and it's good work. But as we plan it, I think as we kind of follow it and it's there, still sort of like remaining open to, the human pace of life that happens, which includes interruptions and pivoting and, the next right thing that we didn't think would have been. And also a willingness to like just do like today's work and not the 5-year plan work, but like what's before me today and how can I, do it in love and with faithfulness and remembering that God is with me in every small moment.
Friends, I hope you enjoyed what Emily had to share. A huge shout out to you, Emily. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. Thanks to our partners, Vern Eide in the International Justice Mission. I love you guys so much. Please go support both of those amazing organizations. Lastly, but not leastly, thanks to each and every one of you who listened to the conversation. I am so grateful.